In Crestwood, Ohio, where cul-de-sacs and chain-link fences gave way to sprawling high school football fields, life revolved around Friday night games, diner milkshakes, and the unspoken rules of who was in and who was out. Crestwood High School, with its red brick facade and hallways lined with blue lockers, was the heart of it all, a place where reputations were made or broken in the time it took to walk from homeroom to the cafeteria. Into this pressure cooker stepped Ellie Harper, a 16-year-old from a sleepy Oregon coastal town, where the biggest drama was a fishing boat running aground. With her wire-rimmed glasses, scuffed Converse sneakers, and a chestnut braid she hid behind, Ellie was the definition of unassuming. But in Crestwood, being unassuming was like waving a red flag in front of a bull. Ellie's family had relocated for her dad's new job at a tech startup, a step up from fixing boats but a world away from the life she knew. Her mom was frazzled, juggling a part-time job at a local bakery and unpacking boxes in their new split-level house. Ellie's younger brother, Max, was only 10 and already thriving, making friends at his elementary school. But Ellie, she felt like an alien at Crestwood High. The school was a maze of 1,500 students, with pep rally posters for the Cougars' homecoming game plastered everywhere and a constant hum of gossip about who was dating who or who'd bombed the last chem test. Ellie just wanted to survive her first week without drawing attention. That, she quickly learned, was impossible. It was Monday, her first day, and she wore her usual armor, a faded gray hoodie, jeans, and her trusty Converse. She clutched her backpack like a lifeline, her schedule crumpled in her hand, and kept her eyes on the linoleum floor as she navigated the crowded halls. By first period, she'd already caught the eye of Jake Malone, the school's resident kingpin. Jake was a senior, a linebacker for the Crestwood Cougars, with broad shoulders, a buzz cut, and a smirk that could charm teachers or terrify freshmen. He wasn't just popular, he was untouchable, the kind of guy who could skip class and still get a fist bump from the assistant principal. His crew was a tight unit: Tyler, a lanky junior with a loud mouth and a knack for cruel one-liners, Ryan, whose hyena-like laugh echoed through the halls, and Matt, the quiet one with a permanent scowl, always lurking in Jake's shadow. They were the wolves of Crestwood, and Ellie was a lamb who'd wandered into their den. It started small, as bullying often does. In homeroom, Ellie was doodling in her notebook, a habit that calmed her nerves, when Jake leaned across the aisle and flicked her pencil off her desk. It clattered to the floor, rolling under his chair. Ellie froze, her heart thudding, as Tyler snickered and Ryan whispered, "Nice aim, bro." Jake grinned, leaning back like he owned the room. "You gonna get that, new girl," he said, loud enough for the kids nearby to glance over. Ellie's cheeks burned, but she bent down, retrieved the pencil, and sat back up, pretending nothing happened. The teacher, Mr. Grayson, a balding man in a polo shirt, was too busy scrolling through ESPN on his phone to notice. Ellie told herself it was nothing, just a dumb prank. Her dad's advice echoed in her head: "Ignore bullies, Ellie. They'll move on." But Jake's eyes lingered on her, and she knew this wasn't the end. Tuesday brought escalation. The cafeteria was a war zone of cliques: jocks at one table, band kids at another, theater nerds arguing about musicals in the corner. Ellie found a small table near the vending machines, hoping to eat her turkey sandwich in peace. She was halfway through when Jake and his crew sauntered over, trays loaded with pizza and Gatorade, drawing eyes like they were rock stars. "Yo, new girl, you're in our spot," Jake said, his voice carrying over the cafeteria noise. Ellie glanced around. No one else was at the table, but before she could respond, Tyler snatched her water bottle and tossed it to Ryan like it was a game of hot potato. "Heads up." Ryan caught it, fumbled, and, accidentally, let it spill across her tray, soaking her sandwich. "Whoops," he said, grinning like he'd won a prize. Tyler laughed, and Matt, leaning against a chair, smirked. Nearby kids watched, some giggling nervously, others pretending not to see. Ellie stared at the soggy mess, her stomach twisting. She wanted to yell, to throw the tray at them, but her voice stayed locked in her throat. She grabbed her backpack and left, the boys' laughter following her out. Wednesday was relentless. In gym class, the bane of every non-athletic kid's existence, they were playing dodgeball, a game that seemed designed to humiliate. Ellie, who'd never been coordinated, tried to stay in the back, but Jake had other plans. He was on the opposing team, gripping a red rubber ball like it was a grenade. When the whistle blew, he zeroed in on her, hurling the ball with enough force to sting. It slammed into her thigh, and she stumbled, her glasses slipping down her nose. Tyler, on Jake's team, yelled, "Nice one, Malone," while Ryan cackled from the sidelines. Even some of the other kids laughed, caught up in the mob mentality. Coach Daniels, a burly man whose eyes were always on his star players, just shouted, "Keep it moving." Ellie adjusted her glasses, her face hot with embarrassment, and shuffled to the sidelines. She could feel the weight of the week building, each jab and laugh piling onto her like bricks. By Thursday, Ellie was a shadow of herself. She started taking detours through the science wing, avoiding the main hallways where Jake's crew held court. But they always found her. In the library, where she'd gone to escape during study hall, Ryan tripped and knocked her books off a table. As she scrambled to pick them up, Tyler flicked a paper clip at her, hitting her cheek. Jake, lounging nearby with a fake yawn, said, "You're so clumsy, new girl. Gotta work on that coordination." Matt, as usual, just watched, his silence somehow worse than the others' taunts. A few kids nearby smirked, others looked away, but no one helped. Ellie's hands shook as she gathered her books, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and something new, anger. She could hear her mom's voice, "Don't make waves, Ellie. It'll pass." But it wasn't passing. It was getting worse. That night, Ellie sat cross-legged on her bed, her room still half unpacked, cardboard boxes stacked in the corner. She stared at her reflection in a small, cracked mirror propped on her dresser. Her glasses were smudged, her eyes red from holding back tears. She thought about telling her parents, but her dad was working late, and her mom was exhausted, baking pies for the bakery's weekend rush. Besides, what could they do? Go to Principal Warner. The man was practically Jake's personal cheerleader, always at the football games, hyping up the Cougars and slapping Jake on the back like they were old pals. Ellie had seen it at the pep rally her first day, the way Warner called Jake, our MVP, to a roaring crowd. No, adults were useless here. She had to handle this herself. Ellie wasn't always this quiet, this small. Back in Oregon, she'd had a tight-knit group of friends, kids who spent weekends binge-watching Stranger Things or playing Dungeons and Dragons in someone's basement. More importantly, she had a secret, one she'd almost forgotten until now. Her uncle Mike, a former Army Ranger with a laugh as big as his biceps, had spent a summer teaching her self-defense when she was 12. It started as a game, something to do while her parents were at work. Mike had shown her how to use an attacker's size against them, how to stay calm when adrenaline kicked in. She'd practiced flipping him onto a mat in their backyard, giggling as he flopped dramatically, pretending she'd knocked the wind out of him. "You're tougher than you look, kid," he'd said, ruffling her hair. She hadn't thought about those lessons in years, but now, they were all she could think about. She rummaged through a box labeled, "Ellie's Stuff," and found an old spiral notebook, its edges frayed. Inside were her 12-year-old scribbles, Mike's instructions in messy handwriting. "Stay low. Use their momentum. Don't hesitate." She read them over and over, her fingers tracing the words. She remembered how it felt to flip Mike, how her small frame could send a grown man tumbling if she timed it right. She wasn't that scrawny kid anymore, but she wasn't weak either. The anger from the week, the pencil, the water bottle, the dodgeball, the paper clip, burned hotter. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was done. Friday morning, Ellie woke with a fire in her chest. She still wore her hoodie and Converse, but she tied her hair into a tight ponytail and cleaned her glasses until they gleamed. She tucked Mike's notebook into her backpack, not because she needed to read it, she'd memorized every word, but because it felt like carrying a piece of her old strength. At school, she walked with purpose, her head up, even when she caught Jake's smirk in the hallway. She could feel the moment coming, like a storm on the horizon. Her uncle's voice echoed, "Pick your moment, Ellie. Make it count." The moment came after fourth period, in the main hallway near the trophy case, where glass cabinets gleamed with football trophies and homecoming crowns. The hall was packed, kids streaming toward the cafeteria, the air thick with the smell of pizza and teenage chaos. Jake and his crew were there, lounging against the lockers, tossing a hacky sack like they were auditioning for a 90s teen movie. Jake spotted Ellie and stepped into her path, his grin wide and predatory. "Yo, new girl, still tripping over your own feet," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. Tyler laughed, bouncing the hacky sack off his knee. Ryan chimed in, "Maybe she needs a leash or something." The crowd slowed, phones already out, sensing drama like sharks smelling blood. Jake reached out, aiming to flick her glasses off her face, a move he'd done before, knowing she'd flinch and scurry away. But Ellie was done flinching. Time slowed as she reacted. She grabbed his wrist, her grip firm, and twisted it just enough to throw him off balance. Stepping to the side, she hooked her leg behind his knee and pulled, using his own forward momentum against him. Jake, all 200 pounds of muscle and ego, went airborne for a split second before crashing onto a study table in the hallway. The wood groaned under his weight, sliding a foot across the floor with a screech. The hacky sack flew from his hand, bouncing lamely into the crowd. The hallway went dead silent, then exploded in gasps, cheers, and the click of phone cameras. Tyler's jaw dropped like a cartoon character. Ryan's laugh choked off mid-breath. Matt, for the first time all week, looked genuinely shocked, his scowl replaced by wide eyes. Jake scrambled to his feet, his face a mix of red-hot embarrassment and fury. "What the hell?" he shouted, his voice cracking with something like fear. The crowd was buzzing now, some kids chanting, "El lie. El lie," while others uploaded the moment to Snapchat and TikTok, captions already forming, "New girl owns Jake Malone." Ellie stood her ground, her heart hammering but her voice steady as steel. "Back off," she said, loud enough for the entire hallway to hear. "All of you." She adjusted her glasses, squared her shoulders, and walked past them to her locker, her Converse squeaking on the linoleum. The crowd parted, some kids clapping, others whispering in awe. Jake didn't move. Neither did his crew. For once, they looked small, their swagger deflated like a popped balloon. By the end of the day, Ellie was a legend. The video of Jake's flip was everywhere, Snapchat, Instagram, even a group chat called Crestwood Chaos that Ellie didn't know existed. Kids who'd ignored her all week were suddenly saying hi in the halls. In the cafeteria, a group of girls from her history class, led by Mia, a bubbly junior who wore bandanas and ran the debate team, waved her over to their table. "Girl, that was straight up superhero stuff," Mia said, sliding a bag of chips toward her. "Where'd you learn to do that?" Ellie smiled, taking a chip. "Just something I picked up," she said, keeping Uncle Mike's lessons her secret. She didn't need to explain, she'd earned her place. The aftermath wasn't all smooth. Jake and his crew didn't bother her again, but she'd catch them glaring from across the cafeteria or muttering in the halls. Jake's ego was bruised, and he wasn't used to losing. But the school's social tide had shifted. Kids who'd laughed at his jokes before now rolled their eyes. Tyler and Ryan were quieter, their taunts replaced by awkward silences. Matt, oddly, gave her a nod one day in the hallway, like he'd seen something in her he respected. Even some of the teachers seemed to look at her differently, though Principal Warner never mentioned the incident, probably because it made his star player look bad. Ellie didn't become prom queen or anything dramatic. Crestwood High was still a jungle, with its cliques and power plays, but she'd carved out a space for herself. She started eating lunch with Mia's group, who turned out to love Marvel movies as much as she did. She joined the school's robotics club, where her knack for problem-solving earned her quiet respect. And every day, she carried Uncle Mike's notebook in her backpack, a reminder that she wasn't just the new girl anymore. She was Ellie Harper, the girl who flipped the toughest bully over a desk and showed Crestwood she wasn't afraid to fight back.